Are we on? We're there? Yeah. All our hundreds of thousands of viewers that are waiting to see us. Hello. Happy Christmas. We're here to do the Cabinet meeting today, and I'll call for apologies on item 1. Have we got any apologies? We've got one.
I've received apologies from Councillor Michael Payne.
Thank you. Item 2, approve record the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of November 23, and that is on page 5 to 7. Remove that. Second agreed. We're all agreed. Thank you. Moving along then. Item 4 is the forward plan. And I have to look at your list for that one.
It's just for noting, Chair.
Just for noting. We're just noting that. Okay. Are we all agreed again? We are. We're sailing through this today. And the next one, which is the, this is yours, annual RIPA audit update, and that's on page 17 to 21.
And that's Laura. Laura's going to present.
Laura, where is she? She's hiding now. She's hiding.
Yes, I am
Mel,
hiding.
dip your head
Apologies.
down.
Yes, thank you. So, members, I'm sure you'll be aware this is an annual report that comes every year with regards to the council's RIPA usage. For anyone who is unsure as to what RIPA stands for, it's the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act of 2000, and because the council has investigatory duties, we have to ensure that we comply with RIPA, and part of that is that we have a policy dealing with how we use RIPA, and part of that policy stipulates that we must update members every year with regards to any usage, any amendments, and in essence to ensure that members are kept abreast of what's been going on with regards to RIPA. With regards to the policy, it comes back to members from time to time if there's any review that's needed. I'm happy to report that there are no amendments that are required. It remains fit for purpose, and we also must ensure that we update members with regards to our usage of RIPA. RIPA, again, for any members that are unsure, is in essence to protect individuals' rights. As investigatory powers, we can authorise surveillance upon individuals as part of an investigation covertly. And in essence, RIPA is there to protect those people that may be subject to that surveillance. And in order to undertake that surveillance, be it through cameras or be it through setting up a meeting with somebody whom the person doesn't know is working for the council, we have to obtain an authorisation for that. And there are certain thresholds that need to be met in order to pass that authorisation. And one of them, and the main one, is that it needs to be for the prevention of crime, and the offence that's being investigated must be punishable by 6 months imprisonment or more. And so I'm sure it won't surprise members that there aren't many offences that council officers investigate that pass that threshold. And so because of that, there have again been no RIPA authorisations made this year. That said, it's still extremely important that the council takes its duties under RIPA seriously, hence the audits that are done, and hence the training that is done. The RIPA authorisations, as and when they are given, can only be given by authorising officers. For the council, that is directors or the chief executive. And the entire process is overseen by the interim corporate director as senior responsible officer, and I am the RIPA coordinating officer when it comes to the procedures and processes that we have in place in the council in order to ensure that officers are aware of what needs to occur. So although there have been no authorisations given for the last year, it is still extremely important, and as part of our policy, that we keep training updated. I attended training with external providers a couple of months ago. I will be dealing with refresher training for officers in the new year. I did an in-person training last year, which is still available on the intranet for any new officers that have joined in the roles where they may be required to use investigatory powers. And so that is still available, but refresher training will be given in the new year. And I recently delivered refresher training to our authorising officers with regards to the tests that need to be met. As well as the internal things that we have in place, we are also subject to external review and by the Information Office. They conduct 3 yearly inspections. There used to be a time where they would come into the council and undertake that inspection. With the move of COVID and no doubt budget cuts, that has been reduced down to now a more office-based, desk-based assessment. The last one we had was in 2020, so this year we had an inspection, and I'm happy to report that the information was provided to them as requested, and they were very happy with the way the council were dealing with things, and have in essence said we probably won't hear from them for another 3 years, and to carry on as we are with the training, with keeping members updated. We have a working group that meets monthly as part of Nottinghamshire Information Officers. There is a RIPA group attached to that to ensure that there is connection across all councils with regards to any updates and the like that can be actioned at that level and fed down. So really, that's the update. There have been no authorisations. There has been training that has been delivered and will be delivered in the new year for officers. And we are due another inspection in 3 years' time. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. I'll put you on the spot then. Page 19, 1.8. What was the one in 2015? I know you probably weren't here the last time it was used.
Go again, John. What was...
Page 19, 1.8. I just wondered if anybody in the room, I shouldn't remember, being the longest serving, what the case was for RIPA inspection. It was 2015 since it was last used.
Oh, I'm afraid I wasn't here,
Can you let us know? Because I'm just interested. You know when you see something like that, I think,
Yeah, I might be able to assist you.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I believe the last time, from memory, because I was here, the last time we used the RIPA authorisation power was, I think it was for a benefit fraud, which we don't perform that function anymore. So historically we used to undertake investigations into housing benefit and what was council tax benefit fraud, but we no longer perform that function. And I think, from memory, that was the last authorisation in 2015 that we had to go down to the Magistrates' Court and secure.
Thank you. And then can I just ask that it's noted that we have put that in, member training, that we give it a little bit of attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think to refresh people, it helps because time goes by and you forget. If we could look at that and then everybody's up to scratch on it. Okay, David.
Thanks, Leader, and thanks, Laura, for the report. My recollection is the same as Fran's, that we had more of RIPA investigations or authorisations when we were doing benefit fraud investigations. We haven't had any since for a long while. I just think it's summarised in paragraph 1.11, where it's still essential, whatever the level of RIPA usage, that the council keeps processes and procedures under close scrutiny. So we have, if it's needed, we have RIPA in position to use it, and I'm reassured from what Laura's told us that we have got processes fit for purpose. So I'm happy to support the report. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Anyone else? No one else? Okay, we'll move to the vote. Move the recommendations. Seconded. Agreed. Thank you. Moving on. Who's next, Joe?
Joe Gray.
Joe. Thank you. That's on page 23.
Thank you. This report relates to the authority monitoring report. This is again another annual report, and this updated version covers the period April 2022 to March 23. And in fact, this is the 19th authority monitoring report that's been prepared by the Council. The purpose of the report is set out in the National Planning Practice Guidance, and basically there are three purposes. We need to publish information that shows progress with local plan preparation, that reports activity relating to the duty to cooperate, but also in particular shows how the implementation of policies in the local plan is progressing. So the updated report is attached at Appendix A. So in terms of the key updates for the financial year covered by this version of the AMR, in terms of local plan delivery, all policies of the Aligned Core Strategy and the local planning document, which together comprise our local plan, are being implemented. Members will be aware that progress is being made on the preparation of the Greater Nottingham Strategic Plan, and Gedling's working closely with Nottingham City, Broxtowe and Rushcliffe. A recent report in September to Cabinet approved the preferred approach document on strategic distribution and logistics, and consultation on that document took place until the 7th of November. We are intending to consult on a full draft strategic plan in 2024. The Council also continues to fulfil the duty to cooperate with neighbouring authorities, and more information on that is provided in Section 3 of the Authority Monitoring Report. In terms of other planning policy documents, the Council published an interim planning policy statement on first homes in October 2022. So moving on to monitoring of local plan policies, this comprises by far the bulk of the report, and Section 5 of the AMR monitors the implementation of the local plan against all of the monitoring indicators set out in the Aligned Core Strategy and the local planning document, but also the sustainability appraisal, which was progressed in tandem with the local plan. So the majority, as I say, of the AMR addresses monitoring information, which covers the same planning topics that are covered by the local plan. So climate change, environmental protection, green belt, and as set out in the long list in the covering report. So the recommendation is to ask Cabinet to note the content of the latest version of the Authority Monitoring Report, which covers the 22-23 financial year. Thank you.
Jenny?
Yes, just to thank Joe for the report, very comprehensive report again. And it shows the good progress that's been made against the documents. It's good to see that there's been a gradual improvement in the overall index of multiple deprivation, although small, and that's in the face of an ongoing cost of living crisis, so that's good news. In terms of house building, we've performed very, very well, again in the face of quite difficult circumstances. Empty homes once again, a lot of empty homes brought back into use by the dedicated and tenacious work of our empty homes officer. You'll see that we've got an ageing population in Gedling, like a lot of other areas, and it's clearly something we should need to be conscious about when we go forward. But apart from that, everything's in the report, Leader, and for anybody to read, and it's available on our website if anybody wants to look in depth. So thank you.
Thank you. David?
Thank you, Leader, and I'd echo what Jenny has said, that it's a fascinating read, this, and it's one of those things where you forget how much has changed, and and I was looking at some of the detail of some of the sites, and things like pubs that have become shops and shops that have become pubs, and all sorts have changed, an amazing amount of change that's gone on. But there are one or two things out that struck me on the report. Population over the last 10 years, been a 20% increase in the over 65s, which is notable. The reduction in CO2 emissions from 4.6 to 3.3 tonnes per capita, I think, so it's a credible reduction. And The housing completions, looked at the previously developed land, and if my calculation's right, I think something like 35% of all completions have been on previously developed land. And those who go out to us and say you ought to just be building on brownfield land, you know, we can demonstrate here that we are building on brownfield land, and when you look at the list of sites that have been used, there aren't that many left. So you've been pursuing that, and just the wealth of the physical environment that's set out in here, both the recreational and open spaces and the heritage assets across the borough, and of course one thing, the average house prices have nearly doubled in the last 10 years. But it's, as Jenny says, a fascinating read and well worth people who want to understand what's going on in the physical environment in Gedling to have a look at. Thank you.
David, anybody else? It's a good factual Bible, if you like, for people to look at and see those changes. Quite right about brownfield sites. They are disappearing fast, aren't they? There's quite a few empty shops, but you know, if you look at the big sites, when you look at Victoria Park and places like that, they've all gone. The pit's gone, all the rest of it's gone. So changes, and that's it. We won't stop it. But I'm just thinking yesterday we had a couple of hours on AI and digitals and this, that, and the other. That's going to really help on something like this. It will save, you know, feeding the information in. When we fully understand it and when somebody comes along and tells us how to use it. But I think it will help and there'll be significant saving because there's a lot of work gone into that. You know, it's looking at the pages that are there and that information gathered wasn't done in a day, wasn't done in a week, it was done over a long period of time. So thanks for that, Joe. I'll move the nomination, the recommendation there, which is on page 223. Seconded? We agreed? Okay, thank you. Moving on to 7, which is Community Infrastructure Levy and Section 106 monitoring. Lewis. Where's Lewis hiding? He's there. I can't see you. Yes, Jenny, do that.
Thank you, Leader. I'm here today to present the Gedling Borough Council's annual infrastructure funding statement, reporting on the financial year 2022-23. The Community Infrastructure Levy regulations require that local authorities publish an annual infrastructure funding statement, also known as an IFS, in compliance with regulations set out in the 2019 SIL levy. The IFS is split into 3 sections consisting of a SIL report detailing the receipts collected, allocations and expenditure of SIL throughout the reporting period, a Section 106 report on the collection, allocations and expenditure of Section 106 financial and non-financial contributions, and a statement on of infrastructure in the borough which may be funded through planning obligations in the future. This report covers the financial year 2022-23 from April 22 to March 23. All charging authorities who collect SIL receipts and/or Section 106 contributions are required to publish the annual IFS, and they must be published before the 31st of December each year. Within areas with 2-tier governance, such as a borough and county council, both the borough and county councils are required to produce IFSs, reporting on the planning obligations that they secure throughout that year. Nottinghamshire County Council are responsible for collecting and reporting on their own Section 106 obligations, such as transport and education contributions. These contributions will be published in the County Council's IFS, which should be available on their website in due course. The role of the IFS is to provide transparency for stakeholders and local residents regarding the collection and expenditure of planning obligations. The IFS is also useful in supporting the wider planning and delivery framework by identifying infrastructure priorities which can help determine future local plan policies. Appendix A of the report contains the relevant information as prescribed by the Community Infrastructure Levy regulations. A breakdown of some of the key figures of the IFS have been provided at the beginning of the report, which can be found on page 123 of your agenda packs. In summary, a total of 1.6 million was collected in SIL receipts during the financial year, and at the end of the financial year, a total of approximately 5.6 million in SIL receipts have been retained. Of this, 5.3 million is to go towards the provision of strategic infrastructure projects within the borough, and around 270,000 towards local neighbourhood projects. Of the receipts collected during the reporting period, a total of approximately £230,000 has been passed directly to local parish councils to expend on local infrastructure provision in the area that they were collected, and approximately £82,000 has been collected towards the SIL administrative covering costs. I would also like to make members aware that whilst at the end of the report, Gedling held a total of 5.3 million for strategic projects, the council have also transferred approximately 4.44 million to Nottinghamshire County Council in the autumn of this year, and these monies were used to part fund the construction of the Collier Way, previously the Gedling Access Road, and this was in accordance with the previous commitments of Gedling Borough Council with the County Council. As this payment was made outside of the reporting period, it is not detailed in the report, but it should be noted that this will be fully detailed in next year's IFS. Moving on to the Section 106 obligations and contributions, a total of around £650,000 was collected in capital contributions and around 150 in revenue contributions. And during the same period, there was a total expenditure of around £280,000 capital and £30,000 revenue. And at the end of the financial year, a total of approximately 3.5 million in capital contributions were retained by Gedling Borough Council, the details of which again can be found in the report. The IFS also includes data which has been gathered in relation to non-monetary contributions secured by way of the Section 106 agreements, and these include provisions such as affordable housing and local employment plans. Details of the non-monetary contributions can be found commencing on page 142 of the agenda packs. The recommendation is that Cabinet notes the contents of the report and agree to the publication of the IFS 2022-23 as detailed in Appendix A on the Gedling Borough Council's website. Thank you for your time. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Lewis. Can I just ask on the GAR? That's it, isn't it? We've got nothing else to pay on there, have we?
That's correct, yes.
That's correct. That's good. Shows Gedling pay the bills. Perhaps we can't use any of this to fill some of these potholes up, can we? It's like the moon surface getting down here at the moment. No doubt it'll get done in the future. Anybody want to comment on that? Yeah, Jenny.
Yeah, so thank you, Lewis, for yet again a very comprehensive and easily understandable report. I think it sets out very clearly what's been collected and how it's being used. Obviously, an important contribution to local infrastructure, not only affordable housing, but going to other things which are listed, and I'm sure there'll be applications in the future. I think there's only one 106 which is due to finish next year, but the rest of it are all in good time. So unless there are any particular, I don't think there are any particular questions. I think it's fairly straightforward. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen to the SIL and 106 in the future, so we're waiting to see what DLUC say about that.
We'll wait to see what happens, what government say or whatever, who's in charge. Okay, anyone else? No one else showing, so that's recommendation move there. That we note it. Okay, agreed. Thank you. Thanks, Liz. Okay. Moving on. Mike. And that's, where are we? Sustainable urban drainage systems. And I did say in our pre-meet we needed Paul Key on this one, who used to be here, because Paul was obsessed with urban drainage, ditches, you name it, he knew it. But anyway, if you've got any information, that'll help. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. So by way of background, on the 20th of September, full council resolved that Cabinet should receive a report to consider the introduction of a supplementary planning document that ensures adequate drainage is installed first on any new housing development before any other construction works are carried out. A trigger for the occurrence of this was surface water runoff from two elevated sites in Burton Joyce during the autumn of 2022, following a significant period of rainfall in a short period of time. Such a measure to manage surface water by replicating natural drainage patterns and to deliver benefits in terms of water quality, amenity and biodiversity, so that they are not simply treated as an engineering feature, but a key component of development design. Where councils have prepared a supplementary planning document, these have been in response to issues and opportunities. So locally, Mansfield District Council has prepared a supplementary planning document on sustainable urban drainage systems. But in this case, it complements a programme of works being undertaken by Severn Trent Water in the town centre as part of a master plan to improve the public realm. None of the Greater Nottingham Planning Partnership Councils have prepared a supplementary planning document specifically on sustainable urban drainage systems, and none are proposing to do so at the current time. Technical guidance is available to ensure that sustainable urban drainage systems achieve the required standard to manage surface water. In terms of their use as a design feature to promote biodiversity and to achieve multifunctional green space, guidance is provided in existing planning policies. Where existing policy is deficient, it will be addressed through the Greater Nottingham Strategic Plan, the future local planning document review, and an emerging design code and open spaces supplementary planning document, which are both at an advanced stage of preparation. In order to address the specific issue of construction phase flooding, following the heavy rainfall in October 2022, the approach taken by the Council in our role as local planning authority is to attach a standard pre-commencement condition to planning permissions where development is proposed to take place on elevated land. The condition requires a surface water drainage scheme to be put in place during the construction phase with details submitted and agreed prior to the commencement of development. This is considered to be an effective solution and meets the relevant policy and legal tests for imposing planning conditions. I recommend that Cabinet firstly note the content of the report, which confirms that issues relating to sustainable urban drainage systems more generally are addressed by existing and emerging policies and guidance, and pre-commencement conditions are an effective solution to effectively manage construction phase drainage. And secondly, agree that it is not necessary to produce a supplementary planning document specifically on sustainable urban drainage systems to ensure adequate drainage is installed first on any new housing development site before any other construction works are carried out. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Jenny? Then Henry, sorry.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I didn't know whether Henry wanted to go first. Thank you. Yes, thanks very much, Mike. I mean, we know this has been an issue. We have constructions where sites are elevated, but clearly work has been done to address that issue, to produce an SPD with emerging plans and the conditions that are already attached to planning permissions would be superfluous at this moment. So I agree entirely with the recommendations that are put into the report. Thank you.
Henry?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment with regards to this, because I'm actually in agreement with Jenny on this, in the fact that actually if you have a supplementary planning document in place, it doesn't necessarily mean that you resolve the issues, because I know for a fact in the ward I represent, Coppice Ward, Hamilton Close, drainage systems were put in place, French drains, for example, and because it's on an elevation, and because the developer had piled tons and tons of clay above Hamilton Close, the clay in heavy rain and poor weather had all collapsed down, and it actually caused carnage at the top of Hamilton Close in terms of the damage it has done to some of the driveways up there and also to parts of the gardens there. So what I think needs to happen is that if you do, you know, I think there needs to be conditions on the developer that, you know, what are they going to do to ensure that any drainage systems they put in place aren't made ineffective by the work that they're doing. That would be something that I think needs to be considered as well. Thank you.
Yeah, if I could just come back on the comments that Councillor Wheeler made, so thank you very much for those comments. I agree. I think going forward, we need to ensure that the construction management plan actually addresses some of these issues. So that actually dovetails into the drainage condition as well, that we ensure that these sites, these sensitive sites on elevated land, that construction management plan actually takes into account topography, storage of materials, etc., and earth, to ensure that there aren't any unintended consequences by the practices that are proposed on the site.
Thanks, Mark. I'm just interested in, I know on the big sites it'll be done properly, but on the smaller sites, how do we monitor that? Is it building control?
No, it would be planning enforcement. It wouldn't be.
Yeah.
So in terms of building regulations, a developer, they don't have to use a local authority. They can use an approved inspector. Where a developer uses an approved inspector, we wouldn't visit sites for the purposes of seeking compliance with building regulations. So that would be a planning enforcement matter.
This is strong enough now to improve the situation. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? No one else? Asked her to note and to agree. 2 items there on page 151. We agree? Okay. Thank you. Now moving over to Mel's area, which is the Head of Environment. Mel, thank you.
Thank you, Leader. This report is provided to advise members of the Netherfield Selective Licensing Scheme Review and Proposal Phase 1A to declare selective licensing designation within the private rented sector, and to obtain member approval for the Netherfield Selective Licensing Scheme Review and Proposal Phase 1A to declare a selective licensing designation within the private rented sector, to be issued for a 12-week public consultation, and to seek member support of the proposed fees and resource requirements outlined in the financial implications section of the report, subject to the result of the public consultation. Following Cabinet's designation of the first selective Netherfield licensing scheme Phase 1, which saw private landlords in a designated area sign up to maintaining their tenanted properties at least a minimum standard of property management, Cabinet is being asked today to review the initial Phase 1 scheme and consider the renewal of the Phase 1A Netherfield Selective Licensing designation. The objectives of the Council's Selective Licensing Scheme in Netherfield were, and will remain, to address poor housing conditions, to introduce a mechanism to address antisocial behaviour associated with private rented homes, to introduce a mechanism to address crime associated with private rented homes, to introduce a mechanism that contributes to addressing levels of deprivation, and to see improvements in property management. The review of the Netherfield Selective Licensing Scheme, Appendix 1, Section 5, shows that there is evidence to show that the scheme has met or is making good progress towards meeting the scheme objectives. And they're summarised in the objectives from 1.11 to 1.15 in the report, pages 162 to 163. So the proposal is that members note the Netherfield Selective Licensing Scheme Review and Proposal Phase 1 to declare a selective licensing designation within the private rented sector. This is to ensure that vulnerable households are able to access safe and suitable accommodation in the private rented sector within Gedling, and to obtain member approval that the Netherfield Selection Licensing Scheme Review and Proposal Phase 1A to declare a selective licensing designation within the private rented sector is circulated for a 12-week public consultation. This is to consider views on the potential renewal of a selective licensing scheme of private landlords for the Netherfield ward, and that members note the proposed fees and resource requirements outlined in the financial implications. Alternative options are that officers could have considered not to review the scheme in Netherfield, but this wasn't proposed, as the scheme is showing signs of positive impact. And officers considered that if there are other areas of the borough that would benefit from an introduction of the selective licence scheme, which would take a combined total of the council schemes above 20% threshold requiring approval from the Secretary of State, currently there is insignificant evidence to satisfy this introduction. So in terms of financial implications, the financial calculations found in this report are based on full cost recovery and licensing covers the staffing requirements and any associated costs. Legal implications. Selective licensing is a regulatory tool provided by the Housing Act 2004. Part 3 of the Housing Act 2004 sets out the scheme for licensing private rented properties in local housing authority areas. Under Section 80 of the Act, a local housing authority can designate the whole or any part or parts of its area as subject to selective licensing. And this report seeks approval to conduct a 12-week public consultation. It's a statutory requirement that before making a designation, the local housing authority must take reasonable steps to consult with persons likely to be affected by the designation, and Cabinet must consider any representation made in accordance with such consultation. And the consultation will take place in the usual ways: mail shots to private landlords, leaflets to be hand-delivered, press releases and adverts. Equalities considerations of the decision to hold a public consultation. It's not considered that any of the protective characteristics outlined in the Equalities Act would be adversely impacted, making a decision to hold a public consultation. The consultation will allow individuals to express their views on the proposal in order for them to be considered by the Council. And the Secretary of State's guidance explains that when considering designating a selective licensing area, the local housing officer must take reasonable steps to consult persons who are likely to be affected by the designation and consider every representation in accordance with the consultation. A press release will be issued to raise awareness of the consultation, with landlord associations notified, and targeted social media posts and email notifications. And a copy of the Equalities Impact Assessment that was produced when the original Phase 1 selective licensing scheme in the Netherfield ward was introduced is attached to this report and will be reviewed through the course of the public consultation. In terms of carbon reduction, environmental sustainability implications, holding a public consultation to introduce selective licensing will not have an adverse impact on carbon reduction, but should a renewal of the selective licensing scheme in Netherfield be implemented, it has potential to have far-reaching positive impacts on carbon reduction and environmental sustainability. The Council has seen through the selective licensing scheme a substantial number of properties having been improved, including measures such as additional insulation, new heating systems to address excess cold hazard, and also reduce carbon emissions. And this follows the government's direction of travel for private rented homes in continuing to improve energy efficiency. So members are asked to note the various appendices and background papers, and the recommendations, just to reconfirm, are that Cabinet note the review of the selective licensing scheme in Netherfield and the proposal Phase 1A to declare a selective licensing designation within the private rented sector. They approve the selected licensing scheme review in Netherfield and proposal 1A to declare the selective licensing scheme within the private sector to be issued for a 12-week public consultation, and that members note the proposed fees and resources requirements outlined in the financial implications section of the report, subject to the result of the public consultation. Thank you.
Thanks, Mel. Comments, David?
Thanks, Leader, and thanks to Mel and Sam for the report and the clear and typically thorough review of Phase 1 of the scheme. I think just to pick out some of the highlights to me from Appendix 1, the review, as Mel said, it's a comprehensive summary of the objectives, of the achievements, and how much progress has been made in selective licensing in Netherfield, and what's left to be done and where to go from here. When we looked at selective licensing in 2017-2018, Netherfield ticked all the boxes, all the government's criteria for selection, which is why we consulted and chose it. The report points out that unlike some other local schemes, the intention was always to inspect all private rented accommodation in Netherfield. Now, COVID hampered that, but a significant proportion has been done, and the report sets out that the ones that have been missed will be caught up with if phase 1A goes ahead. It stands out to me that 81% of the premises required essential works just to make them safe for people to live in. So it's the scheme has raised the quality of both management and the physical environment in Netherfield. The report gives some case studies of some of the things, but they're fairly dry. I know Sam's got a rogue gallery of photos of some of the appalling conditions that the team found, and the inspectors found looking at them. And we know it's difficult for tenants to complain to landlords or to complain about landlords. So this is a safeguard for them, that they're not complaining, that it's our staff that are going out and finding the problems and telling landlords that they need fixing. I remember in the consultation, landlords were very sceptical about what contribution they could make to addressing antisocial behaviour, but as the report points out, they have a role to play with other agencies, and they have done this. If we continue with the scheme, if we have a second phase, I think that it'll enable us to continue to be more proactive in the area, to engage with landlords and tenants and other parties, and the opportunities that Mel alluded to, some of the things that are brought into this, like the disabled facilities grants, like the energy efficiency schemes, and the safer streets. So as far as I'm concerned, we had extensive consultation 2017-18. This report makes a case for continuing the scheme and to going out to consult on it, and I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Anyone else? Yeah. Either or.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Leader. It's more of a question because I know that the selective licensing scheme in Netherfield has been very good, but much of the casework I hear about is about homes of multiple occupancy, which are exempt from the scheme because they're licensed separately. Do we have a similar control over those homes? Because we get much more casework from there than we do from selectively licensed premises, it seems to me. I don't have any statistics to show that, but this is just from our own logs.
Is it Fran, you would? Sam?
Would you like me to answer that? So selective licensing does cover HMOs, but the smaller ones. So currently a property with 5 or more occupants requires a mandatory HMO licence from the council, and of those we have about 40 that we've got licensed at the moment, and it's a government set scheme. They have a standard set of conditions that we apply, and similar to selective licensing, we go out and we inspect and we would follow up complaints. The smaller HMOs that have maybe 3 or 4 tenants living in them, if they fall within a designated selective licensing area, we can pick them up for a selective licence. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but there are systems in place.
The systems do match one another similarly, do they, for the larger HMOs? Because it seems to be them that where we don't have the same rapport, if that's the right word, with the landlords.
Where we've got a licence in place, we can follow it up and we can deal with it. But it doesn't have to have a licence. It could be a property that had less than 5 occupants that didn't fall in one of the selective licensing areas. We could still investigate it. We've got officers within public protection that also deal with noise issues, antisocial behaviour, things like that. So, yeah, where we get reports received by our team, then we will follow them up.
Thank you.
It's probably more where we need to keep an eye on it, because I see another one's coming for Acton Road, I think it is, in Arnold today or this week, and that may be on delegation tomorrow, is it, David? And the one that's stirring it up in Netherfield, of course, is another one on Meadow Road, which is 10 bedrooms in, and you know, some of the reports back are factual, but some are fiction as well. I don't know quite where we'd, you know, down our training programme, whether we get this, because HMOs are not going to go away, are they? That we make sure everybody's up to scratch on it, because there will be all sorts, you know, there'll be stories that start at one end of the corridor and by the end, everybody's horrible that's in these places. Well, they're clearly not. But we need to have the law that's strong enough to protect them. Jenny?
Well, really just to echo what David said about the positive results that the selective licensing had in Netherfield, and it really does take the burden and the anxiety away from tenants who might be quite frightened of reporting, because it's taken away from them. And the fear of eviction, I think, must be sort of quite high. But I just want to point out 196. We do recognise what a contribution that private landlords make to our housing supply, and they're an important part of it. And it is good to see that we're continuing that positive relationship with our private landlords. However, we do need to recognise there are some who need a little more attention to protect residents from the worst. And it's good that the carbon reduction is being made evident now by improving those heating systems and insulation to the older properties. So that's really all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No one else? Just have my thanks, Mel, and to Sam particularly. The work that's, you won't know it and you won't see it in those pages, but you've probably saved some lives. I mentioned before, I worked in property maintenance, and what I saw was horrendous. Some of the way that people were left to live, because you're quite right, Jenny, they were frightened to report because they thought they'd get thrown out. And it was often vulnerable women that were on their own with 2 or 3 kids who were being threatened. I can't say anything when there's water dripping through, mould and everything else. And I think what you've done, there'll be an invisible urn in there. We will never know it. Nobody will ever know it. But we will have helped and improved the health of people. I think we should, you know, as far as we can do it. And again, I remember that. I just looked, I thought, was it 2017 when we started that one off, David? And, you know, it's gone on and on and on. And now it's the renewal time. But we couldn't have done it without the help of some excellent landlords. There are a few rogues out there. There are in life. But I think with the help of them, with the council, and with, you know, the good work that's coming out of your department, that we've managed to help a lot of people improve the quality of their lives. So thank you. Right, we've got that. It's on page 159. 2 items there. That's noting and approving over the licensing schemes. Are we agreed? We are agreed. Thank you. And we're still with Mel, which we're on item 10, which is safer streets.
Thank you, Leader. This report's to update members on the delivery of the Safer Streets 4 round of funding and to review its outcomes and success. In April 2022, the Home Office opened applications for the 4th round of Safer Streets funding to expand on previous rounds and include the safety of women at night and targeting neighbourhood crime and violence against women and girls, as well as including antisocial behaviour as a primary focus. The Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner for Nottinghamshire secured £750,000 from the Home Office's Safer Streets Fund for a range of public safety projects in South Nottinghamshire, with support from the Nottinghamshire Police and South Nottinghamshire Community Safety Partnership. South Nottinghamshire Community Safety Partnership submitted a funding bid in May 22 to provide £250,000 for each partner area. That's Gedling, Broxtowe and Rushcliffe, and were successful. The following initiatives make our communities safer and were recommended for the Colic and Netherfield areas: new CCTV and automatic number plate recognition cameras, PCSO's laptops, burglary prevention intervention, car park safety, improvements to the cinder path in Netherfield, shop watch scheme improvement, street wardens in Colic and in Victoria Retail Park, and youth provision and street lighting improvements. The successful award of funding was announced in July 22 to enable delivery to take place. And in terms of new CCTV and the automatic number plate recognition cameras, There have been 5 installed across Netherfield and Colic, as well as 1 mobile ANPR fitted to a police car for the area, and a high-tech camera capable of 360-degree viewing has been put up at the entrance to the site near Sainsbury's and just off Colic Route Road, and 1 at the junction of Balmoral Drive. In terms of PCSO's laptops, new laptops are helping PCSOs stay out on the streets for longer, fighting crime and antisocial behaviour. These devices mean officers don't have to spend as many hours inside police stations and instead can offer more of a reassuring high visibility presence on the street. And the outcomes have been a 50% decrease in time spent at stations, so a positive result there. In terms of burglary prevention, free security devices were provided to victims who suffered vandal attacks in their homes, allowing them to sleep normally at night, having high-tech security devices fitted to their houses. And the table in 1.7 indicates some of those measures. There were doorbells and a gold, silver and bronze level of service was offered. That has seen effect already in starting to reduce levels of burglary in the area. In terms of car park safety, communal car parks have been further developed in Netherfield to reduce vehicle crime and improve residents' feelings of safety. Large planters have been removed that were shading areas and making them dark at night and slightly inhospitable for people, and lighting has been improved to illuminate the areas where people park their cars. The cinder path in Netherfield was known for ASB and alcohol and drug and litter problems. So there's environmental improvements which included litter picks and reducing some of the shrubs and trees in the area to open up the space and get it better illuminated, have all served to improve conditions for the residents in those areas. In terms of the shop watch scheme, retailers are working with the police and street wardens now in Victoria Retail Park to keep shoppers safe. The funding enabled extra radios to be purchased to enable wardens, the police and the shop security to communicate with each other. And in terms of street wardens, 2 safer street wardens have been contracted by the council to provide extra visible uniform presence at Victoria Retail Park, as well as residential areas and in the nearby Colic Industrial Park. The wardens gather evidence of antisocial behaviour and criminal activity and then report them directly to the police. And in terms of the youth provision that took place, dance and music production workshops took place and were developed for the Netherfest held on July the 23rd. 25 young people have been through as part of the workshops, and a group were booked on an adventure day in August during the summer breaks and had the opportunity to go climbing, sailing and take part in team building activities that they wouldn't otherwise do. And of those outputs, 13 youth work sessions were delivered and 33 individual young people attended. Some of the young people known to the police, so a very positive move there. The Safer Streets 4 projects delivered as outcomes and environmental improvements have all had lessons to learn from them, and there are some recommendations that are coming out that have been noted in the report on page 6. Some of the lessons, retail, commercial and residential areas have different competing demands, so you have to deal with them in different ways. You can't have a blanket service provides for all. And in future, if we run such an initiative, we need to plan for the unexpected, such as contractors going into administration. Governance and project management structures are important. It's helpful to have lead expertise on projects that can work across more than one authority area. And partnership capacity is often at an optimum level already. So delivery is often dependent on individuals that are already overloaded. So that needs to be taken account of as we move into the future. And in terms of the Home Office and PCC recommendations, there's a need for greater devolution and flexibility to make budget and intervention changes. and project managers should be mainstream requirements of funding and increase how much funding can be spent on administrative costs. Some of these things have been reflected in the Safer Streets 5 initiatives that is just starting at the moment, so we will see some of those recommendations applied. And the proposal being that Cabinet note the update and analysis of the outcomes. An alternative option would have been not to have bid for and accepted the Safer Street funding and deliver to the action plan arising and continue initiatives on an ad hoc basis. However, this wasn't recommended as it would have failed to deliver to the not safer plan priority of preventing crime and protecting people from harm. In terms of financial implication, budgets for the Council-led initiative were included in relevant budgets in 2022-23 and 23-24 and were monitored separately as projects were delivered in order to ensure deliverables were identified and that the grant funding conditions were met. The Council actually delivered outcomes which totalled 109,500, resulting in a slight underspend, and that wasn't carried forward as that didn't meet part of the grant funding conditions, but still very good against the budget that was allocated. And in terms of the legal and equality implications, the delivery of the programme involved the procurement of services over a period of time to ensure that they were procured correctly, the Council's procurement rules were followed, and as the Safer Streets 4 initiative and action plan were delivered, opportunity for consideration of the views of local residents and staff were considered at the time as each project was delivered. And the report had no immediate carbon reduction or environmental sustainability implications. So in essence, the reasons for the project were to make progress against the not safer plan priority of preventing crime and protecting people from harm, to reduce the proportion of residents experiencing neighbourhood crime to below 7%, and to keep members updated on the progress of the Safer Streets 4 funding and initiative plan. Thank you, Luca.
Thanks, Mel. David.
Thanks, Leader, and thanks to Mel for that report. I think that we ought to start off by recognising and give credit to the PCC and her office for ensuring that South Notts Community Safety Partnership managed to access this funding. It was another one where, without that sort of input, we would have missed out on the funding. Mel's has summarised the outcomes and the outputs, and I think it demonstrates how the effect of investing in community safety, relatively small amounts of money, have had a significant impact. And it's not in here, but there's also been some work across the South Notts CSP where the public feel safer because as a result of this work. And I think we ought to thank the officers for their hard work in bringing this forward. But I think we ought to also recognise the context of this, that this is after 13 years of reductions, which has reduced the capacity of all various authorities to plan and deliver over the longer term. Yeah, and it's damaged services, so we've seen reductions in policing, in youth, in the criminal justice system, in the capacity of local authorities to deliver some of this stuff and to design out crime. You know, there was very little in Safer Streets 4 that was innovative or unexpected that we couldn't have done if we'd not had the resources for longer. And paragraphs 1.14 and 1.15 summarise some of the learnings from this, from the workshop that you and I attended, to sort of debrief on Safer Streets 4. And essentially, you know, this funny money, this short-term funding, has costs of its own, which makes it harder to plan. We have to respond to external criteria, and it comes with a whole load of costs. So I think we've done well out of this money, but I'm not sure as a model going forward that so many small pots of money allocated on a grant-giving system or a competitive system are the way forward. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Jenny?
Exactly what I was going to say, Leader. I think what's been done in the short space of time with this relatively small amount of money is really exemplary. And I want to thank all the officers who took part. But once again, it's small amounts of money that have to be almost competed for, which are short-term measures. And yes, you can see what improvements been made just in that short space of time. But I look at youth provision. Great, 13 youth sessions delivered and 33 individuals, but we need far more sustained input for youth. And Henry will tell you, because that's the business that he's in. We know the Loco Club has done an awful lot to improve the youth provision, but we can't have just these individual sessions and then just leave the youth to their own devices again. It's just unsustainable, and it's about time we got some proper long-term sustained funding from this government instead of this potpourri. We see it right across the board in terms of planning and development and levelling up and everything else. It really just isn't good enough, Leader, and it's about time it was sorted out. We got proper funding so that we could develop proper sustainable services for all our residents, but particularly the youth in the borough. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Catherine?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I mean, I totally agree with the comments that David and Jenny have made. That's exactly right. We've seen 13 years of austerity, and that has had its implications right across the board. But as we've said, it definitely shows the positive impacts that we can make with a small amount of money. I just want to say that I welcome the CCTV additions, the warden patrols, the car park lighting in particular, and the Cinder Hill path improvements. And looking through the resident survey, it was interesting to note that they have all made a significant impact on the way that women and girls and parents feel safe. So, that's obviously a positive to point out. I also note, as Jenny said, about the youth workshops and the youth work sessions and the junior award scheme for schools, all reducing ASB. But as we've already said, we need proper funding to address these issues all year round, 24/7, round the clock. Not just small pockets of funding. I also note the lessons learned, particularly around budget flexibility and the bureaucratic funding process for this round of funding, and hopefully those recommendations will be ironed out for SS5. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Henry, anything on you? So, sorry, Bev.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. Yeah, just following on from what all my fellow colleagues have just said, the perverse nature of this short-term funding, and for cash-strapped local authorities that are being given numerous challenges during this austerity, the time it takes our officers to try and implement these things, often at very short notice. There's a lot of pressure to say that we need to, access and use the funds, but the notion of sort of how you can get all these things off the ground in such a short period of time, and the amount of time it takes diverting from other things that the officers are doing. So I'd like to commend our officers for achieving so much with such a little amount of money. And we'd hope that our colleagues in the county council are listening, particularly when it comes to the youth provision, because one of the things that we know from surveys is that young people don't feel safe in their communities. So actually all we can do to support and make sure there are safe places for young people to go. And we know that in the old days, that was the local youth club that doesn't exist. And it's interesting that it's usually high priority young people that are really suffering from poor mental health that are struggling with cost of living crisis, struggling with family issues and debt, that we're trying to do our absolute best with. But we need a regular weekly service, and the County Council needs to spend its money on our youth provision. But I just go back to sort of, again, just the time spent from officers that we're giving them multiple tasks to do, and it's just not acceptable. So thank you, Leader.
Thanks, Viv. Henry?
Yeah, I'd just like to comment on youth provision. I think it's commendable what officers have done with this small amount of funding that we've had, particularly the interventions. The difficulty that youth workers have on the ground is the short-term planning. There's a lot of short-termism, and also in terms of the funding, there needs to be a lot more funding on the ground in terms of making, for example, recruiting more youth workers to do more work out in the community, for doing outreach opportunities and for doing more positive activities out and about in the community. There is an absolutely fantastic youth provision in Arnold at Redhill Youth Centre, which operates Monday to Friday, and they do various activities in providing for the younger young people, but also the slightly older young people. And the difficulty is there's only so much you can do in such a short space of time, because the sessions that are provided are 2.5 hours. Usually in an evening. But I think there's a lot more that could be done in terms of working collaboratively with some of the local schools, the academies and so forth, going into schools, doing interventions, particularly around crime prevention work. The Middle Adventure Base, which is where a lot of the young people went during the holidays, is an excellent opportunity as well in terms of building relationships, healthy relationships, and looking at positive activities that provide key life skills. Because that's another thing that we need to provide. We need funding for helping young people gain those key life skills that they need as they grow into adults. Because if they gain those key life skills, that actually helps prevent crime as well. It helps reduce violence and all those sort of issues as well. There has been a lot of work done over the last few years, but like you say, it's very limited in terms of the funding that's available to do that work. And we need so much more on the ground because, quite frankly, a lot of what used to be there isn't there anymore. It's disappeared. A lot of the interventions that were there are no longer there. So sometimes if you're working out on the ground, like I do, you feel like you're firefighting because you're going around in circles. Because you resolve one issue, the funding runs out, and then you're having to revisit it again because the interventions haven't carried on to the next stage because the funding's not been available for that intervention to carry on to the next stage. So for me, the key is early intervention is key, but also it's not just early intervention, it's carrying those interventions on to ensure that those young people then grow into rounded citizens as they become adults and that they're kept away from crime and all the other things that might cause problems as they're growing older. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks there, Henry, and agreeing with everyone that's spoken. The begging bowl situation has to stop. Whether it will under another government, I don't know. Whether there's any money there to do it. But what I do see is what you've done, Mel, and the team, with a very small amount of money, well, not a relatively small amount of money, have done a lot of good. I've spoken to the wardens that we got, and I'd like to see that type of thing that we've got in Victoria Park extended to Arnold and to Mapley and places like that. I know they come to the end of their term, I think, is it May? At the moment, and I really would hope that we could keep, because the quality of the two people that are doing the job is excellent. I'd also agree with David on the commissioner, and she may be a different political persuasion to us, but she's thrown a political hat away while she's got in there. And I know she's had the rows with the Home Office, but she's extracted more than any other crime commissioner in the country money into her local area, and that's what it's a part of. And I personally know what that's like, because I've had many rows with Labour Home Secretaries trying to get money when I chaired the police authority. It's not easy, and everybody's saying, shouldn't we be doing that? but she did it. And but I think at the end of the day, we've used this money well, but I'd obviously like to see some more. The 100,000, say, we put into levelling up bids, that might have been added to it, but we had to put that into it, so that was wasted. And all the other things we have to do, jump through the circle, and then, on these short time scales. But all in all, very good. There's no doubt to that. Sound like him off Strictly Come Dancing, don't it then? Very well, but yes, so anyway, I'll move off, where are we? Page 3 from Strictly to we're noting the update analysis of the outcomes and successes delivered. So are we agreed? We are agreed, thank you. I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. Only to say thank you to everyone for this year's work. Looking forward to next year's work, and wish all the staff members and people of the borough happy and prosperous new year when it comes, and see if we can have some peace over Christmas. Thank you.